All right, let's just jump right in. For as long as there have been nations, there's been this one giant unresolved question. What do we do about national debt? Is it this incredible engine for growth, or is it just a ticking time bomb waiting to blow everything up? So, what's the verdict? Good or bad? Well, here's the thing. The answer is both. And that's what makes this so tricky. The real question isn't whether a country should borrow, it's about how and why it borrows. And, trust me, as we're about to find out, there's always a clock ticking in the background. Okay, first things first, we've got to get one major misconception out of the way. A country is not like a family household. You know that advice we always hear, avoid debt like the plague? Well, that just doesn't work when you're talking about an entire nation. See, for you and me, taking on a ton of debt is super risky. One lost job, one medical emergency, and poof, we're in trouble. But a nation? Think of it like a giant sprawling company. If the auto industry is having a bad year, maybe the tech sector is booming. It's diversified, which makes it way, way less vulnerable. There's actually a name for this mistake in thinking. It's called the fallacy of composition. It's the error of assuming that what's true for one piece, like a single family, must also be true for the whole thing, like the entire U.S. economy. And this is exactly why that soundbite you always hear, we just need to cut up the national credit card. Well, it's just not that simple. Plus, a country has a few superpowers that you and I definitely don't have. The biggest one, this is the real ace in the hole, is that it can print its own money. Think about that for a second. If you can't pay your bills, you can't just fire up a printer in your basement. A government can. And get this, a little bit of inflation can actually be their friend because it makes the old debt they owe worth less over time. It's kind of like a built-in cheat code. Okay, so if going into debt isn't automatically a disaster, then what's the point? Why do it? Let's talk about the upside of going into the red and why pretty much every nation does it. It really boils down to an idea that's super common in the business world, return on investment. For a country, we call it a cost-benefit analysis, or CBA for short. And the question is dead simple. If we borrow $1 billion to build, say, a new highway, does that highway create more than $1 billion in value for everyone? Does it make businesses more efficient, create jobs, boost the economy? And that's the golden rule, right there. As long as the answer is yes, as long as the benefits outweigh the costs, then the debt isn't a problem. It's actually a tool. It's fuel for the engine of national growth. But, and this is a huge but, not all government spending is the same, not even close. Spending money on things like new airports, high-speed internet, a modern power grid, that stuff almost always has a massive payoff. It's like upgrading the entire country's operating system. On the other hand, spending on the military? From a purely financial perspective, that almost never pays for itself, unless you have a decisive victory in a war where you can literally take the other country's stuff, which, let's be real, just doesn't happen anymore. The other big advantage here is speed. Think about it. In a world where technology moves at the speed of light, being first is everything. Debt is basically a time machine. It lets a country pull future resources into the present so it can invest right now to build the next big thing, instead of pinching pennies for 20 years and watching another country eat its lunch. And then, of course, there's the famous or infamous Laffer curve. This is the theory that says if you cut taxes, you can actually increase how much money the government collects because the economy will grow so fast. Now, it looked like it worked back in the 80s, but here's the catch. Almost every time it's been tried since then, it's failed spectacularly. It's a perfect reminder that these economic tools are not one size fits all. What works in one decade might be a disaster in the next. And frankly, it's often just used as a convenient excuse to pass popular tax cuts. Okay, so far, debt sounds pretty useful, right? But now, we have to flip the coin over. Because for all the good reasons to borrow, there is one cold, hard fact of history that you just can't ignore. And this is where we get to the dark side. The party doesn't last forever. All those benefits of borrowing, they're not infinite. Every single nation that goes down this path is essentially on a timer. There is an expiration date, a point where the whole system just can't take the weight anymore, and the bill finally comes due. And as that day gets closer, you always see the same 3 warning signs pop up. It's like a trifecta of doom. First, inflation starts to run wild. Second, the country's currency starts to tank. And third, interest rates have to be jacked up to insane levels, basically as a desperate Hail Mary to stop the whole thing from collapsing. So let's bring this into the real world. How is the US doing right now? Well, if you look at the scorecard, we're not in the red zone. Yet. Inflation is up, but it's not out of control. Government bond yields are higher than we'd like, but not at panic levels. The really interesting one, the one to watch, is the currency. The US dollar has lost about half its value compared to gold in just a few short years. So, is the expiration date tomorrow? No. But is the clock ticking? Absolutely, yes. This leads to a really big question, right? If we can see these warning signs flashing, why is it so incredibly hard for a country to just stop, to turn the ship around? Well, the answer isn't in an economics textbook. It's all about human psychology. Here's the fundamental problem. The things you need to do to fix the national debt, raise taxes, cut popular programs, are political suicide. Nobody wins an election by promising to do that. But you know what does win elections? Promising to cut taxes and spend more money. The pain from all that spending won't be felt for years, maybe decades, long after the politicians who did it are gone. The entire system is basically set up to reward short-term thinking that leads to long-term disaster. So what does the end actually look like? It's not a gentle, slow decline. It's a cliff. It's a national bank run. It starts with just a tiny group of people getting spooked and quietly heading for the exits. But then, fear hits this critical tipping point. It goes viral. And suddenly, everyone is rushing for the door at the same time, selling the currency, dumping the bonds. It's a self-feeding panic, an avalanche that just gets bigger and faster until the whole thing shatters. And this, to me, is the scariest part of the whole thing. The final straw isn't some economic data point. It's not a number. It's a feeling. It's a wave of panic that you can't predict or control. A situation could be perfectly manageable on paper, but if enough people get scared at the same time, that fear alone can create the very crisis they were afraid of. So, let's step back. What do we have? On one hand, a tool that's absolutely vital for building a modern, prosperous nation. On the other hand, a guarantee that eventually it will fail. It's a sobering thought. We're all living on borrowed time. Which brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? The one everyone wants to know. If this thing has an expiration date, when is it? Is it next year? 10 years from now? A century? And the only true, honest answer is nobody has a clue. It's impossible to know. There are way too many moving parts, and the biggest one of all, that wild card of human panic, is completely unpredictable. So if you ever hear someone say they know for sure when it's all going to end, they're selling something. So what do we do? If we can't know the when, what's the smart move? Well, it means we have to stop trying to guess the date and focus completely on making the absolute most of the time we have now. It means every single dollar of government spending has to be put through that tough cost-benefit test. Is this really worth it? We need to be doubling down on investments that create real, lasting growth and be absolutely ruthless about cutting out the waste. The mission isn't to live forever. It's to be as strong and healthy as possible for as long as possible. And that really leaves us with one final big question to chew on. And it's not really about economics anymore. It's more profound than that. If you knew, for a fact, that your time was limited, but you had no idea how much time you had left, how would that change the way you live your life starting today? Because that is the exact position every modern nation finds itself in.